Alright, so let's do a little planning discussion here on rewiring the lights on the tractor. Now you guys know, or at least those of you that have watched a lot of my videos know, that I have a bad habit of rednecking things. Just cutting wires, splicing here, and it typically makes things worse rather than better. It gets me by, but it makes a bigger mess in the end. So I have decided, I've committed on this tractor, at least for rewiring these lights, that I'm going to try to do it as best as I can, as correct as I can. What I'm wanting to do, and I've already gone through it, and I've actually discovered that the original factory headlight wiring harnesses are still on here, and they still work. I have no idea why the prior owner it's like he just unplugged the lights and took them off. I don't know. Anyway, so the temptation is strong to just tap into that wiring harness and just use it. That'd be the fastest, simplest thing to do. Honestly, that's what I've already done. Looking here on the front of the tractor, which I don't think you guys can see, but I've just got a daisy chain. I'll show you here in a second. I just started clipping and just crimping stuff together just to see what I could get away with, to see if I could make it work. And last night I had 3 out of 4 of the lights lit up, and the 4th one, for all I know, it's not working. But anyway, so the temptation is very strong for me to just say, all right, good enough, let's go with that. But I don't want to do that. So we're gonna treat this like it's a whole new wiring install. I'm gonna leave the factory wiring harness and just leave it like it is. I'm just gonna run my own beside it, which is what I did originally. But if you guys go back to the video when I first bought the tractor and put the lights on it, I just had gator clips on the batteries, which is rednecking it. No fuses, no switches. I had to get off, hook the clamps up, and those actually ended up failing me because it was aluminum wire and it corroded at the clamps. The wire kept breaking. So that's why I'm redoing it now. I've been without lights on the tractor for, probably close to a year. It didn't last very long. Anyway, so we're going to be treating this like it's a new, like this tractor never had lights on it before, other than it's got a light switch that we're going to come off of. So we have to consider what we want to do with it. Now in my case, I want to put 4 lights on the main chassis. That's 2 on the front, 2 on the back. And I want to have 2 up on the boom, which is how I had it wired up back when I first originally wired it. That way, if I'm carrying something big on the bucket and it's blocking my chassis front lights, hopefully the lights on the boom will see over or around whatever it is. So I've got a total of 6 lights that I want to put on. Well, each of these lights is a 48 watt light. Now the quick math on looking at wattage and amperage and voltage is I've got a 48 watt light, a 12 volt DC system. The calculation on that is you just do watts divided by volts, and that gives you what your amperage is. So in this case, each one of these lights, 48 divided by 12, is pulling 4 amps. When I look at my fuse panel here behind me, I have 2 fuses that are dedicated to the lights. I have a 15 amp fuse for the low beams and a 15 amp for the high beams. And it's basically just splitting the load across 2 fuses. In theory, I could put all of it together on one 30 amp fuse or whatever. But that requires, of course, upgrading the wires. So first off, you have to decide what you want to do. Like I said, in my case, I'm going to run 4 lights on the main chassis, 2 lights on the boom. So what I'm going to do is actually put the 4 on the main chassis on the low beam fuse, and put the 2 on the bucket on the high beam fuse. So basically, when I first turn my switch on to low beams, I'm going to get all 4 on the chassis. I turn again to high beams, and I get the extra 2. And that might actually give me space to put some little side lights down here too, to just help light up beside the tractor, because right now I don't have that. I have front and back, but I'm dark on the side. So anyway, to do this now, we have to look at our wiring size. Okay, so I say I'm going to split it across 2 fuses. Well, the low beam fuse, I want to run 4 amp lights. That's 16 amps. It's not going to work on a 15 amp fuse. Well, okay, these little fuses are pretty universal, the same size. Let me just throw a 20 amp in that slot. I could probably get away with that. But now you have to consider the wire size downstream of the fuse. Is your wiring downstream of the fuse big enough to handle that 16 amp load? In my case, I don't think it is. I've got a, it looks like maybe 20 gauge, maybe 22. It's a pretty tiny wire. Now I could probably gamble with it and just do it. Worst case is the wire's going to get, eventually if the lights are on long enough, the wire would get hot and it could potentially melt through the insulation and catch fire. I really doubt that would happen, but I really don't want to burn my tractor up. So what we're going to do is I'm going to upgrade the low beam fuse run to a 20 amp fuse so that I can safely handle 16 amps worth of current. And in doing that, I'm going to have to upgrade the downstream wiring from that fuse. I've already got the 20 gauge wire. Now to run a 20 gauge wire downstream, I found a table that says a 20 gauge should be able to run about 11 amps. So I'm actually going to have to run it in parallel so that I split the load. So I'm going to have one wire is going to go to the back of the tractor and run the two rear lights, and the other wire is going to go to the front. So it's going to have two wires coming out of a 20 amp fuse. Each one is actually technically only going to be carrying 8 amps. And likewise, the two lights on the bucket will be, or on the boom, those will also be two lights on their own circuit. So I'll split the load out across the wires. That way I can use the wire size that I have. I don't have to go buy a bigger wire, bigger fittings, and bigger connectors and all that. The other issue to address now is the grounding. So it's easy enough. I can tap right here into the back of the fuse panel for my hot, but I want to have it properly grounded too. Now everything on this tractor, from what I've seen, at least the negative on the battery, is grounded right to the frame. So in theory, I could just pick a spot anywhere on here and ground to the frame. For whatever reason, I don't like doing that. I like the ground to also run back through a switch, and I believe it runs through the key switch. There's a couple of wires on there that didn't have any current when I tested, so I would like it to run through the key. That way, when I turn the key on, I get full loop potential through the light switch and to the lights. And when I turn the key off, it breaks both circuits. It doesn't send power to the light switch anymore, and it should also break the negative side of things, I believe. So I'm going to be running my main live power, my supply if you will, out of the fuse panel. And for the neutral, I'm just going to ground it back to the factory wiring harness, just because I know I can do that. The wiring harness is already there. I tried looking over the wires to figure out which one is your primary neutral going back. And unfortunately, it's really difficult to do that because you can't really tell if the wire is the neutral unless you can find where it terminates back to the frame somewhere else. Otherwise, it shouldn't show any current ever on it, unless you have a failure of some sort. So I tried chasing the wires and figuring out where it goes, but I can't figure out where exactly it's looping back through the switch and everything. So we're just going to tee in our neutral on the factory headlight harness, but everything else I'm going to run new wires so that I can upgrade the fuses. So again, we're going to have a 20 amp fuse to run the chassis lighting, the 4 main lights for a 16 amp load. So that should be fine. We're going to split the current across parallel wires on that. So again, the smaller wire will actually only be handling about 8 amps, which 8 out of 11, it should be more than sufficient. On the high beam fuse, I'm just going to leave it as a 15 amp. It technically can, it's only going to be running 2 lights, which is only 8 amps. But like I said, that'll give me an option that maybe I can run some little side lights or something off here too. And I guess I could on the chassis fuse too. 16 out of 20. You're getting a little close. I don't want to pop your fuse, but I think on DC power I'd have less risk of that. So if I can get some little, 1 amp little side lights, and I haven't decided exactly where I might put them, if I even put them on here, but anyway, I wanted to go over this with you guys to really plan this out. Again, my habit, my nature is just cut, splice, rip into it, make it work, and I'm trying so hard to make myself not do that. You guys have seen the video on how I originally wired this tractor up. You can go look at how I wired up the excavator, same way, gator clips on the batteries, and that works. It gets me by, but it's not ideal. It's not good. It doesn't last. So I'm trying to do it right. I want this thing to be where if I have to go work on it a couple more years and do something with lights, I can figure out what's happening. I'm not just doing more cutting and splicing. So planning is the key here. Again, we're treating it like it's a new build, so to speak. There's nothing existing. And so to do that, again, you have to first decide what you want as far as all the lights that you want to put on or accessories or whatever. Then you have to decide, figure out what your amperage is going to be off that, figure out what sort of fuses you need to put in your factory fuse panel. I'm going to, like I said, I'll be able to actually use my factory fuse panel and just upgrade the wire size a little bit on that. And when the time comes, I'll show you guys how we're going to do that too. So hang out, tag along. Hopefully this video is useful to a lot of other people. This same idea of rewiring everything, again, you could use this on any equipment. Obviously trailers don't have a fuse panel on your trailer, but if you're going back through wiring any old tractor or machine, or even your vehicle, in theory, you can do the same thing. It's just a matter, it gets more and more complicated the more accessories you have running. So I'm trying to keep it simple, messing with just the lights. So I'm not going to tap into any other wiring harnesses on this machine. I don't want to mess up any of the other sensors or anything like that. We're just going to stick with just the factory wiring harness for the neutral, and we're going to run a new wiring harness for the new supply lines. So tag along, hope you like it, and there'll be more to come.